Hey, what's going on, good people? Welcome to Russ Can't Fly. Not flying today, but I'm still happy, baby!
Take these off first.
All right, so as luck would have it, I'm getting ready to do my next video, and you know that I'm doing the second part of the Checkride experience that I had. Gonna talk about the oral part of the exam, but before we do that, I want to give some subscriber shout outs. But before I do that, there are some awesome people. See these folks? So I was about to do my video. So you can say your name.
Alec.
Dave. Pete. So the thing is great about the aviation community is that, like, you know, it's such a family. No matter where you go, no matter what you do, you run into some of the greatest people. And as you can see, I just met them 30 seconds ago, and they agreed to be in this first part of the video. They're awesome. So anyway, we're gonna get back to the video, but I just want to show you, if you're not in aviation, you have to get in it because you meet such great people. All right, so let's get to the subscriber shout outs. Okay, so isn't that cool? I mean, that's the thing I love about this community. It's awesome. Thank you, fellas, for allowing me to put you in this video. I love meeting new people, and it is just so amazing. Every time I come out to the airport, I get to meet some of the most amazing people. So real quick, want to do some subscriber shout outs and then jump into the second part of this three-part series, the oral. But before I do that, I want to give a subscriber shout out to The Motionless Day. I want to give a subscriber shout out to Renee Medina, and I also want to give a shout out to that Brother Wolf pilot. Thank you, Brother Wolf, for being such a supportive person for me. I really do appreciate it. And you can see, here's his channel, and this is my favorite thing that he does. Clear That is just so funny. But anyway, Checkride debrief, part 2, the oral. Let's jump into it. Okay, so some of the things that you're going to hear during this oral debrief is things that I think is important to keep in mind when you're preparing for the Checkride, and some of the things that came up during the oral. So the first thing that's going to happen when you do your Checkride, you're going to sit down with the DPE, and you're actually going to go through your paperwork first. Got to make sure that you have all of the credentials that you need to be input into the system. That's going to take, I would say, a good half an hour if you have prepared properly. If it takes more than that, then that means you haven't done things like, you know, total up your logbook. You don't have the maintenance record to make sure that the airplane is airworthy, that kind of thing. That should not happen at all if you've prepared properly. But then right after that, the DPA is going to say something like, okay, the test is about to start, and boom, it's time for the oral. Now, the first thing that you should have done to prepare for the oral is prepare for the questions that you got wrong on the written test, if any. So remember, I showed you a bunch of books in the last video, the first part, and I'll put that video up here and you'll see it flash up there, how to prepare. But one of the things that I showed you was some tabs on the ACS book, and I told you I would talk more about that during this video because it is key. This is probably the first types of questions you're gonna get on your oral exam. So if you remember this book during the first video, I talked about, I had some tabs in this Airman Certification Standards book. And these tabs correspond to these codes. And basically these codes represent incorrect responses that I had on the first written exam that I failed. As you can see, fail. But that's why this book is so important, because these codes basically are outlined in the ACS book. So it looks like this. So PAIAK1 corresponds to this part of the pilot qualification. So PAIAK1, The knowledge there is certification requirements, recent flight experience, and record keeping. Now, the first time I got that wrong, of course, I know what it is now, but it was something about recent flight experience, and I think they asked something about at night, how many takeoff and landings you need. I said 3, but I didn't pick the full stop because it was at night. But basically, these codes correspond to these tabs. As you can see here, I have my second test as well. So in my second test, I did better, of course. I got a pass, and my score was a 98, but I still got 2 questions wrong, and it corresponded to these codes. And so what I did is based on these codes, I basically tabbed off all of the things that I got wrong and made sure I was able to get to that material quickly. The reason why I tabbed off the book and I looked at those particular subject matter areas is because sometimes if the DPE sees what you've gotten wrong, that is a first place that they will go to test your knowledge. And so that's why I'm suggesting to you, definitely look at your written test results. Definitely check out all of those codes to see what they are, and then make sure you go into the ACS book to see what subject matter areas are covered by those codes based on the questions that you missed, and be sure to make sure that you have that knowledge right at your fingertips. Be assured that that's probably an area that the DPE is going to touch on at some point during your oral exam. So do yourself a favor, make sure you have a good command of all of that material for any of the questions you may have missed on your written exam. One of the other things that I will say to you about the oral exam is that you have to control yourself. Now, it may not be as much of an issue for you because, you know, maybe you're not a talker the way I am. And right, you're shocked, right? Russ can talk. Not only can Russ fly, but Russ can talk. Yes, I am a talker. I am an extreme extrovert. I love talking. I love conversations. And boy, do I love a good story. That's not what this is. This is not a time to start telling stories about how you discovered flying, or one day, you know, you were doing your crosswind landing and you had to dip a wing, and so you know that the left turning tendency. Don't go on, because it's just going to make your oral portion of your check ride just drone on and on. All you have to do is answer the question. I kept hearing that you should just answer the question and be quiet. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to be able to do that, or that I should do that because that's rude. That was the best advice I ever received. And so I am giving that same advice to you. Do not, please do not speak in paragraphs when you are basically answering these questions. If he asks you about questions, what does it mean to be, what is it? So if you get a question like, what does it mean to be current or legal versus proficient? Current is I've done the things to be legal. Proficient is I have the actual knowledge and know how to do what is required of me. Done. Shut your mouth, wait for the next question. And no matter how much you want to fidget because there's an awkward silence, you will do yourself a favor. Your oral will be much more efficient if you just answer the question and let the DPE move on. The other thing I will say is, if you don't know the answer to a question, hopefully you prepared. And again, I talked about this, how to prepare, so that you'll be able to get your fingertips on things for some of your aids that you've brought with you or some of your books. But I will definitely say to you, if you're not sure about the answer to a particular question, do not wing it. Don't try to guess, because I'm telling you, these DPEs are well experienced individuals. They're going to be able to sniff you out in a heartbeat if you try to serve them up, you know, something that really doesn't make any sense. So do yourself a favor. Don't try to outsmart these individuals. They're highly professional. They know what they're doing, and they're gonna know if you're making stuff up. And again, they may throw something at you that has nothing to do. It may seem innocuous, and again, you're down a rabbit hole, so don't do that. Now, if you remember, I talked about this book before, and this is a great must-have. Now, this oral exam guide is good because I'll just take as an example the first question that you may get, and it has a question right here. What are the eligibility requirements for a pilot airplane certificate? And the thing that's great about this book is it'll tell you, it'll list them out, and you got to be able to say you must be at least 17 years of age, be able to read, write, speak, and understand the English language. And yes, that level of detail. Just don't say, know the English language. Well, know what about it? Know how to write it. Know how to be able to read it. Know how to be able to understand it and to speak in it, because those are all parts of being able to handle the English language. Have at least a current third class medical certificate, on and on. You get the picture. The thing about it is you want to practice actually answering those questions. Don't just read it and do it in your head and then expect to go to the oral and be able to do it in front of somebody when your nerves and your adrenaline is pumping and your heart is beating 1,000 beats per minute. It is not going to happen. You're going to get tongue-tied and you're going to miss an element, and then that can lead to the DPE thinking that maybe your knowledge isn't where it needs to be in a particular subject area. You don't want to do that. So you definitely want to use this book to practice and make sure that you are verbalizing when you have the questions. I'm not going to lie to you, there was a couple times where I went into a little bit of a brain fog. I was searching for the answer a little bit, and I missed an element or two, and it was one of those things where there were a couple other questions around that subject area because of the fact that I seemed to be fumbling a little bit there. You have to have a command of the material, but not only a command in your head, you have to be able to get your head to empty it out through your vocal cords and out to the DPE. And I gotta tell you, I've seen so many times where when I was practicing, and yes, you should practice answering these questions out loud. When I was practicing, I was fumbling all over the place because I just wasn't used to saying the words. So do yourself a big favor and say the words out loud. Now, the last point that I'll raise, because I don't want this video to be too long, another area you definitely want to make sure that you understand is the whole ADSB and where that type of equipment is required. You need to know within the Mode C veil, the adjacency of Class Bravo and Charlie airspaces. The ADSB and the transponder stuff, that's something you definitely want to be paying attention to. And one other area that I think you really should be paying some attention to, and it was a weak spot in my knowledge base, because fortunately, I started from the beginning during my flight training. I flew all steam gauges, but a lot of aircraft are starting to have electronic avionics, glass panels, and so you definitely want to be paying some attention to this, and I want to point this out so that you can be prepared on your oral exam. So this advanced avionics chapter in the book, I would pay some attention to, especially if, like me, you were flying in an aircraft that had your traditional six-pack and did not have any advanced avionics or glass. So one of the things that's kind of interesting about my Checkride is majority of my training time was in an aircraft that just had a traditional six-pack. However, as I got on in the training, that aircraft was having some maintenance issues, so I was having to fly a different aircraft that did have a couple of advanced avionics in it, in the form of some G5s. And so I had to know something about that, because I had to be able to operate that Garmin 650 and those G5s. Now, 9 times out of 10, you've probably trained in or will be training in an aircraft that's going to have some advanced avionics. And so this chapter 5 in the book, you definitely want to have a command about, because that's something that's going to come up. So that's it. So I know this is like a shorter video, but that's pretty much the oral. First things first, definitely get into your written exam, look at the questions that you got wrong, and make sure that you get into the ACS book so that you can understand what those codes are and what those subject matter areas that you want to study. Second, make sure you get a copy and a most recent copy of the oral exam guide, or borrow it from somebody, or get it online, however you get your material. And definitely areas to really focus on, definitely focus on that ADS-B. So definitely make sure you understand anything on the VFR charts. You should be able to understand waypoints and what symbols are on that. That's a no-brainer. But definitely the avionics chapter in the book is something you definitely want to be paying some attention to. And finally, practice. Please don't let your oral be the first time you are talking about this stuff out loud. You're not going to do well. I'm telling you now, I guarantee you, you still may pass your oral, but you will suffer, because you will be trying to put your words together. You'll be trying to put these ideas. There'll be so much banging around your head because you will not have practiced just talking about it. So if nothing else, just have conversations with people about, you know, what kind of equipment do you need for a VFR flight during the day, you know? And yes, you can use your tomato flames mnemonic to help you remember the different components, but then say them. You know, make sure you say that, you know, it has an annual, it has to have an altimeter, it has a tachometer, you know, oil pressure gauge, manual tank, you know, all of that stuff. Make sure you're able to say it, and say it with some consistency. The bottom line is, the more prepared you are for this oral, the more you've practiced, the more comfortable you can be in answering. Yes, you're going to be nervous. Was I nervous? Man, I tell you, I was never more scared in my life. And I tell you, my heart felt like it was outside of my chest. It was beating so hard. But as I got into it, and as I heard myself reciting what I had already practiced reciting, I'm like, this is not that hard. I am ready. Bring it on. And yeah, there was some areas where, you know, I fumbled a little bit, or, you know, my mind, you know, had these like brain farts or whatever. But for the most part, I was able to pull it together because I was actually talking out loud and I had a command of the material. So that's what I would suggest you do. If you do that, you'll have no problem with the oral, and you will go right to your flight portion and be ready to fly and get your ticket. So at any rate, again, that's it. I thank you for watching part 2 of the Checkride debrief, the oral. The next video and the final part of this Checkride debrief will be the actual flight itself. What is the experience? What are some of the things that I recommend you do to prepare to get into an airplane with a DPE? So that's coming up next. And then after that, it's time to fly, baby, because yes, I got some videos cooking. My first full license flight. It's coming up. I can't wait to share that one with you. So at any rate, this is Russ Kid. Russ Can Fly. I hope you found this useful. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to throw a question or a comment down in the comments, and I will reach out to you and, you know, answer the question to the best of my ability, all right? Ultimately, if you have real questions that, you know, really surround things about knowledge or things, talk to your CFI, because he or she will really be able to guide you. But if you just want a layman's perspective on my experience or something that came up, or to talk about how to control nerves, whatever, please feel free to shoot me a little message down below. All right, I've talked enough. Part 2 is done. Part 3 coming up. Russ Kid, Russ Can Fly. I'll see ya! All right, y'all, be cool, be safe, peace.